Das ist der First German Physiotherapy Podcast, der Gesundheitspodcast mit Premium-Qualität. Investigativ, innovativ und integrativ. Wissenschaft zum Greifen nah.
Hallo Community, mein Name ist Anton. Und bevor der Podcast beginnt, möchte ich noch ein wichtiges Thema ansprechen. Damit der Podcast weiterhin erfolgreich bleibt, wäre es gut, dass ihr den Podcast abonniert, ihn kommentiert und weiter verbreitet. Der Podcast ist auf sämtlichen Social-Media-Kanälen zu erreichen. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter und Instagram. Danke für eure Mithilfe und viel Spaß beim Zuhören. Hello, this is the first German Physiotherapy podcast. This is the first episode where we talk in English, not in German. This is also a premiere for us because we have a guest today, Lars Avemarie. Hi, Lars.
Hi, happy to be here.
Hello, Jan. You're also my guest interviewer.
Hi, Anton. Hi, Lars.
In the first way, I want to introduce our guest. Lars is an educator, science-based writer, personal trainer, and finished his bachelor degree, practiced for some years. Lars has a unique blend of knowledge about pain science, neuroscience, physiotherapy, evidence-based practice, exercise science, rehabilitation, sleep research, and critical thinking. The latter including expertise and argumentation theory in informal logic. He lectures nationally and internationally on the topics pain research, critical thinking, and physiotherapy, and also pain management.
Perfect, I'm very happy to be here.
Jan, Lars, we have to talk. We have to talk now about certain topics.
Definitely, we have to talk. Lars, I'm following you on Facebook for quite some time, and not long ago, you posted a study, the one with the laser machine. Could you tell about it and give us some details?
The study was published in JAMA Open, so it's basically open source and any of our listeners can download it for free. It costs nothing and read the whole study, and would highly recommend anybody interested in this study to read the full study by itself. It was a well-conducted study with some pretty good methodology. The participants were divided into 3 arms or 3 different treatment options, and they received 6 treatments of either spinal manipulation, spinal mobilization, or sham cold laser therapy, functioning as a placebo.
Just to get it straight, they compared spinal manipulation to spinal mobilization and compared both interventions to a sham laser therapy. So can you tell me about this laser machine? What was special about it?
Basically, it was a cold laser that was not plugged in.
This laser does exactly nothing to the patient.
Yeah.
So it was, even so laser therapy might be questionable, it was also castrated. It's a complete inert treatment.
Yeah, it was. And it had a pretty good effect size. There were 162 participants randomized towards one of these interventions. And actually, the outcomes were that there were no difference between spinal manipulation or spinal mobilization compared to the sham cold laser. So basically, there were no difference.
I guess even the laser scored better.
Yeah.
Even in a small amount, but it scored better than both.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether you go for mobilization or whether you go for manipulation. A switched off laser, which does nothing, still is better.
So basically my points from this study is, one, hopefully what we do as professionals should work better than a laser that is turned off. That's my point number 1. And my point number 2 from the study is that sometimes what we believe is not how it is. So there's a great quote by Robert Pirsig, who says the real purpose of the scientific method is to make sure that nature has misled us into thinking we know something that we actually don't. And this study is a great example of this. So many people think that spinal manipulation has a specific effect. From this study, it could seem that actually there's not that a specific effect because it doesn't beat placebo.
What could you say to some physios who might answer, but I see it working every day?
So basically, our thinking about we know what works is highly debatable, and if we begin to think a bit critical, particularly self-critical about the stuff that we do, it will turn us down to a rabbit hole where we see that a lot of the stuff we think we believe, basically also the thought about believing that we know what works, is problematic.
Jan and me, we analyzed the study before we did this podcast now, and we saw it is a very good study. It has 9 out of 11 points from the Petro scala, and also I think the authors tried to take out every bias.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, somebody could argue that we wanted a control group also, an arm who did nothing. That's one of the points you could be making. But like I said, there's the idea I wanted more to promote is that there's also minor flaws with every study. You could say that you wanted the study to have 300 people to have a better effect size. Those are minor changes, and often when doing a study, you need to make compromises. And often the things people call errors are compromises made by the researchers. The researchers often are very, very aware of the compromises they have to make. But like I said earlier, it is a good study.
Things are not what they seem to be for many physios.
A lot of the treatments that we are still being used have turned out actually not to do what we think it does. In this case, manual therapy, and particularly spinal manipulative therapy. Especially as this study showed that it's no better than a laser machine turned off. One key point you could call it the final nail in the coffin with the presumed superiority of manual therapy for me were actually when I read an excellent review by Balowski on the manual therapy and the mechanisms behind manual therapy, where he states that actually lasting change has not been shown with manual therapy. Clinicians are unable to identify areas reliable requiring manual therapy. The forces associated with manual therapy are not specific to a given location, and the forces also vary between clinicians. And there are studies that also show that the choice of technique doesn't seem to affect the outcome, which also would be a key point regarding the placebo effect, that manual therapy by large is a placebo effect.
If every physio would use evidence-based treatments only, would we be a better profession?
In my view, I think so, but so you can find a lot of dubious, low-quality evidence in supporting almost all the very popular modalities that are being used. Effect studies, meaning they look after an effect and they are sort of being designed towards showing an effect, but not in a self-critical way. There's a great paper I would highly recommend also to read, 10 ways to show that your therapy is effective even if it's not. So that's a cookbook towards showing your intervention has positive results even if it hasn't. Many popular modalities, especially the alternative modalities, sort of almost use this as a cookbook to show studies.
You said manual therapy has a problem with this, and you said now there are low quality modalities. Is there a connection and less self-reflection?
There was actually, to my view, and there's some research supporting this. I think it was Lars Avemarie who published a study on dry needling. The finding of the study were that the literature and the research randomized controlled trials regarding dry needling, the more methodological errors research studied had, the more likely they were to be positive. So there's correlation between low quality and positive studies. And this is of course a problem. So to my view, yes, there are a correlation between low quality studies and these alternative modalities.
I think this is a problem we often see because researchers are enthusiastic about their method and they want it to be successful. Driven by this, if there's no good methodology, they always tend to make their intervention look better, maybe unwillingly or unknowingly.
That is in one point a huge problem. That's why we have to be intellectually honest, and we have to really try to use the scientific method to its full capacity. Meaning we have to propose, as Karl Popper stated, propose bold hypotheses, put them through the severest of criticism that we can in order to find out if we have made an error. A lot of the studies we are talking about doesn't do that. They are designed based upon what is called confirmatory thinking. They are designed not to disprove, but to prove that there is an effect, that the intervention works. But actually we should, using the null hypothesis, we should try as hard as possible to disprove that it actually works. And if we can't, then we may say there's some possibility that the effect is real. And this is basically the primary principle of science. And this is why we should use a scientific mindset, not only in studies, but also in the clinic.
This brings me to the next question. We actually have a chance using scientific methods, so we can find out. So if we have answers now, why do we have resistance to use more updated and plausible interventions? Why do we still stick with the old stuff that is unproven and unplausible?
So basically, from my view, it all starts in physiotherapy school. So in physiotherapy school, we get spoon-fed from our upbringing ideas about superior therapeutic tools, stuff like manual therapy or electrotherapy or magical techniques that provide quick fix biomedical focused interventions. And for instance, this were a lot of the focus when I were in physiotherapy school. However, a problem is that there's little focus on some stuff that's actually evidence-based, something like shared decision making, which has actually been deemed by researchers integral to high quality evidence-based patient-centered physiotherapy practice. So a key question I have been asking at my courses with the participants, and I have been asking this question for the last 2 years, is have anybody read a paper on shared decision making? Almost nobody has. I've had one course where there were 2 participants who had read a study on shared decision making. In all the other courses, and before Corona, I did something like 8 to 12 weekend courses around Europe and also in the States. There are 2 people that have actually said they read studies on shared decision making. And this is quite a paradox. If this is deemed to be an essential part of high-quality evidence-based patient-centered physiotherapy practice, how come nobody's actually knowledgeable about it? How come nobody's reading about it? And this is a problem. So this is one of the key points why I think people have resistance towards more plausible interventions and methods, because actually they don't know about it. So because they don't know about it, they actually devalue it. The case is the same with something like the cumulative therapeutic effort, meaning how we communicate as health professionals with our patients. This is also a highly overlooked topic, and this is also an essential skill. But I have seen very little focus upon teaching us or learning proper clinical communication. We have evidence suggesting that what we say and how we say it can be of huge importance. There's a great paper by Peterson et al., which looked at nocebo effects, and the researchers found that verbal suggestions without conditioning appear to be able to produce moderate to large nocebo effects. So basically, just by how we say stuff, we could be producing nocebo effects.
Plausible and evidence-based treatments which are available are maybe boring, they don't use unicorn dust, or they don't use magic, they have no special skills in my golden hands. Maybe the therapist doesn't look so guru-like. Maybe that's what many therapists are missing in an evidence-based approach.
I totally agree on that. As I mentioned before, our upbringing, our teaching is in physiotherapy school. We learn that we should be able to heal people. There's actually a great article upon this about a health professional viewing themselves as a healer. And if you are a healer, you want to do the healing part. And you want to do the magic part. But the problem here is the evidence doesn't support that. We actually can't heal another person. But we can help another person that is suffering. We should view ourselves more as an interactor, somebody who's interacting with another human being, and the other human being has a will of their own. And this is one of the barriers towards more evidence-based ways, is that we should not view ourselves as magicians, as healers. We should view ourselves as being interactors, meaning that we interact with an autonomous, self-thinking human being. To go back to the question you asked before, one thing is also that regarding our education, there's a great paper by Bradell where the researcher states physiotherapy tends to remain tied to historical ways of seeing the world. And these ways are passed down to generations of physiotherapy graduates. So basically, the old ways are still being taught. And that is a problem when the old ways of looking at physiotherapy is passed down to new physiotherapy graduates, and the evidence is conflicting with these old ways.
But the old ways often are sold as new ways. So when I look in the catalogs of courses that are available on the market, there's literally hundreds of magic techniques and stuff that is just sold under different names. You can buy everything. What happened? So when and why did the physiotherapy field get sidetracked?
Of course, there's multiple factors why this happened in my regard. One of the key points is described in a great editorial by physiotherapy professor Jules Rothstein, somebody I also would highly recommend you read about or read his editorials. He was the chief editor-in-chief of the American Physiotherapy Journal between 1989 to 2005, and a lot of the editorials he wrote back then are still very relevant. In one of those that call who we are versus what we do. And one of the problems why physiotherapy did get sidetracked is that we started to describe ourselves as towards what we do, not who we are, meaning that we are physiotherapists, and a physiotherapist has a lot of stuff they can do. But in order to differentiate us, we started to describe ourselves as our interventions. So people describe themselves as manual therapists, as McKenzie therapists, fascial sling therapists, as dry needlers, as acupuncturists, as boba therapists, and then we are describing what we are doing to people, not who we are. And that's a problem, because already there we are introducing a severe bias towards what we do. In my view, a physiotherapist should be able to choose the methods to be used that the patient's needs dictate. So maybe if you're a posturologist, you believe that posture is the root of all evil, and posture will cause global climate change and stuff like that, and flooding down in your part, you will think that everybody who comes in the door is better off if you do posturology towards them. Problem is that's not patient-centered, that's practitioner-centered. Then you are choosing what the patient should be doing. Patients' needs should be dictating what they need and what you should be doing, not what you want to do. So if you're an acupuncturist, you're a posturologist, you're a dry needler, you are a McKenzie therapist, you're a manual therapist, then you already have made it very difficult to yourself to actually do patient-centered care, because in patient-centered care, the patient's needs dictate what you should do with them, not what you want or the last CE course you learned?
I was on the BPT this year on the online conference. There was a session with Professor Gwen Charles, and she said we have to be careful about new things. We have to look and have to wait. Is that right that we use them? And I think it's a bit problematic. What would you say?
About using new things, I think we should be critical towards new fads and new things. But we should also be questioning our old practice patterns. Or the old patterns are often being accepted because a lot of therapists are doing them. So basically when you graduate, you think, I need some stuff to do on the patient, not with the patient. I need something I can do to the patient. So I need to have some kind of needling course. I need to have something that makes me special or feel special. So I go out, I think I need a lot of tools in my clinical toolbox. The problem is there that we are not actually very critical towards the tools we are putting in our toolbox. In my view, we should actually throw the toolbox away, and we should recognize that we are working with another living human being together with them. And there's a great saying from a doctor in the Netherlands, in Nijmegen, and he says, we should recognize that we should not be doing stuff to people, we should be doing stuff with people. And we should learn our patients to master their own rehabilitation, their own health.
So when we summarize this, do we need a change management?
In physiotherapy, to my point, we clearly need a change. And this change actually can't go fast enough. And especially because the pain management field is highly competitive. And a situation we have now is that a lot of personal trainers or athletic trainers are actually taking research-based courses. This is particularly true in my home country, Denmark, where a lot of athletic trainers and personal trainers are taking research-based pain management courses. So you can be a personal trainer with far less proper education, but you are in the situation where you actually know more about the current state of pain management and pain rehabilitation and pain research than a university-educated physiotherapist, because the education the physiotherapist gets is out of date. And the notion that the education we learn is out of date is well founded in research. Thompson et al. Has clearly defined that there are huge problems with what we learn about pain, both Europe, but also in Canada and also in UK and also in the States. So we have good evidence supporting the notion that it's problematic what we learn in school about pain. They use the phrase, it's highly inadequate. Clearly we need to change, and we need to change fast. But I am, what could you call it, pessimistic optimist or realist. So I hope change will happen, but no, I'm not placing any bets on it, because the current state of our educational system is that we are still learning old theories. Regarding the notion that you talked earlier, that there's a lot of new stuff, but actually it's old stuff that also only has been rebottled, meaning it's like the same book, but we changed the cover. It's like dry needling 2021, but if we look behind the cover, the content is actually totally the same or almost the same as it were 10 or 20 years ago. A paradox here is, are we really being innovative if the treatment options we use are several thousand years old? I would argue that we are really not. They're just made up. That's the different problem. I actually talk about this in my course. So often pain management is done with a old world mindset, meaning it's totally ignoring the research we have now, or it's done with a future mindset, meaning in 10 years we might have evidence supporting the notion that what I'm doing now is evidence-based. Well, that's wishful thinking. That day may never come. And that's also a problematic and it's not a defendable position to have as a health practitioner. You can't defend that you're doing something that is not evidence-based because you think that evidence will be catching up. And you can't defend that what you're doing is not supported by the current evidence because what you're doing is thousands of years old. Use the knowledge we have right now. That's totally defendable. Then any person can come to say to you 5 years later, well, why did you do that? Then you can say, well, at that point, the evidence was in favor of this said treatment. But I changed. I evolved as I learned more and we found out more. That's a totally defendable position.
Lars, what do you think about German physios when they get their education in a physio school? They don't even have to learn English. They don't even have to read English. So do you think this is a basis for a modern way of learning physiotherapy?
No, not in any way. And the same problem is in Denmark also, and I think the same is in Sweden. Danish Physiotherapy Association had an article on their website. The topic were that it was actually a big problem that Danish physiotherapists did not have the skill set to read English research. 90 to 95% of the research in the musculoskeletal field is being published in the English language. If you are a German or Danish or Swedish or Dutch physiotherapist or physiotherapist in any country, you need to be good at reading academic research, academic English.
Lars, you blew my mind when you said we need to say how we are, not what we do. So at that point you had me and you convinced me this is a great insight. If we just make the last step and try to find out how could future care look like, what would it consist of?
This was actually my topic at my San Diego Pain Summit lecture last year, and this was actually on one of the last slides in my presentation. So I mentioned in that talk that a shopping list approach could be sufficient to describe this. Basically, if we make a shopping list towards all the ingredients that are needed to make modern pain rehabilitation, the shopping list sounds something like this. Our care should be biopsychosocial, multifactorial, neurophysiological and behavioral, patient-centered, interactor-oriented, meaning that we are not an operator fixing anything in another person. We are an interactor. We are interacting with another person, another autonomous being. Then we should use a consistent clinical reasoning process, meaning that any particular diagnosis or problem we face in our practice, we actually use the same reasoning process. And then we should use something called analytical approaches, meaning that analytical approaches is that we use a more stringent way of approaching problems, not what is called an automated approach, sort of go on to autopilot. That's a big problem.
I think, Lars, you blow our mind, me and Jan. You talked out of our soul, and we also we hope that this will be changed in Germany, also in Switzerland, also in Austria. But I think there's a community who's starting with this. Like us, for example, we are nerds, we want to inform us of our working and want to make a better working. I just want to say out of mine, thank you that you've been here and talking about physiotherapy and the modern way of physiotherapy. Everyone, you have to write in the comments and make a discussion about this podcast. And I want to thank you, Jan, my co-host, and Lars again, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Lars. Hope we can repeat this soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here. Bye.
Das war der First German Physiotherapie Podcast. Wenn euch das Projekt gefällt, unterstützt es, indem ihr dann den Podcast abonniert, Kommentare schreibt und Diskussionen anregt. Danke fürs Zuhören und bis zum nächsten Mal.